That is the beauty of the kayak. You know, I mean, like, you could talk about ADA and stuff like that, but look what God did. I mean, no craftsman could make a surface that smooth, that soft, that gentle. And, you know, you get out on that boat and, I mean, you're free, you know. It doesn't matter whether you can swim, it doesn't matter whether you're crazy fit, it doesn't matter whether you've ever done it before. You know, once you're on the water, you're kind of all on an even playing field. And, you know, kind of with that in mind, you know, that's why I think we talk about safety a lot more in this sport than we do in a lot of sports, because, you know, I don't know, probably one of the most extreme things that people do in Texas is motocross. In fact, that jump over there, that used to be a motocross jump over there. And, you know, if I was doing motocross and I wrecked and I broke every bone in my body, I'd still be sitting there, breathing just fine, right? I may be uncomfortable, but, you know, where in the water, I might not have a scratch on me. And 30 seconds from right now, under this dock, I could be thinking that I'm really fighting for my life, right? Because of that aspect of breathing. And more than anything, it's a mental aspect. And so when you don't have that experience swimming, you know, that changes the way that you think a lot. And so I want to give you guys a little bit of perspective, just so that when you're thinking about going out, that you're ready. You know, obviously we have perfect temperature here. We're in Texas. Most of the time we have, you know, pretty comfortable, you know, in terms of safety, ways of getting out on the water. You know, the water is warm. Obviously the weather is usually pretty good. So I'll address kind of one of the concerns that I have. You know, really, I look at the water as just a playground. In fact, I mean, when you think about it, in Texas especially, we don't have a ton of public lands, right? Can't go for a 800-mile hike. The Brazos River is 800 miles, and that's all public. You know, closer to us here, the Colorado is like 600, the Guadalupe is 600. I mean, that's an incredible trail system. And especially when you think about how it's just carving through our state, it makes some of the most beautiful places. So, you know, the only way you'd find them is to kayak, right? And if you don't have the kind of knowledge going into it, it's real easy to get in over your head. And by that, I mean, you know, it's just a playground until something goes wrong. And there's really only two things that really scare me about the water. One is water temperature. Now, first of all, I'm a scuba guy, like, I don't like being cold, so I'm probably not going to get into a situation where I'm in the cold if I can help it. But what is surprising is that if the water and the air temperature is below 120 degrees, it saps the energy out of your body. And I don't care how motivated you are. I mean, I competed in the Olympics. I think of myself as a very goal-oriented individual. But literally, within 30 seconds, and the air temperature and water temperature is less than 120 degrees combined, I won't even care. And I've seen it. I mean, the most determined, hardcore individuals I've ever met in my life get that energy sapped away from them, and they're just like, leave me, I'll be okay. And it's just a change in your body chemistry. So it's something that you've just got to understand. You know, it might be a beautiful day in February, okay? So we're getting our kayaks right now. We're gonna be super fired up. It might be cold a couple of times between now and February, but I guarantee there's gonna be that beautiful day in February where you're just gonna have to get outside. If you're gonna have your kayak and so you're gonna go kayaking. Water might be a little cool though. So you've gotta be prepared. You've gotta have the right equipment. You know, even just having the life jacket. I mean, I think of the life jacket not in terms of swimming. I grew up swimming, so like I can't relate to you in that way, but I can tell you that, you know, having a life jacket is the #1 thing, especially from the American Canoe Association perspective. What we want is everybody to enjoy kayaking safely, not just from the enjoyment, but because we don't want the government coming in and telling us, you have to do this, you have to do that. I mean, I think that kayak has to be registered here because it's got a sail. But all the rest of them, you can just throw in a body of water and it's free once you've got it, right? And so that is just an incredible luxury that we have right now in this sport because we take care of our own and because we prepare ourselves. You know, the government hasn't come in and said, oh, you ne'er-do-wells, you need to do this and that and the other thing and get this license and that, whatever. So to keep that being the case, the #1 thing from the American Canoe Association perspective is just wearing the life jacket. I mean, it seems ridiculous, especially sometimes when it's hot. You know, like I can swim, whatever. But just having this, it's like padding. You know where I have most of the worst accidents? It's right there. It's not on the water. It's slipping and falling right there on the shore. And look, if I fall in this, I've got some padding. And so, like, just wearing the life jacket, I cannot even tell you from a practical standpoint, makes you infinitely safer. When you're talking about temperature, you know, it's keeping that core warm. I particularly like this one because it's got most of the flotation down here at my core, and then this part up here is quite open, like those. You know, if you've got a comfortable life jacket, you're going to use it. If you don't have a comfortable life jacket, you've got one of those horse collar things or whatever, you're never going to use it. And so it's never going to be helpful. Like, don't even buy it. There's no reason to buy it if you're not going to use it. So get a comfortable life jacket. There's some really good ones out there. They're nice, and you know, when I think about kayaking, I'm usually paddling in rivers. And so another aspect of this is not just padding for if you fall down, but you know, there's always things sticking at you and stuff, and it's very easy to brush up against them. If you've got this on, it's padding. Don't have to worry about it. There's a lot of things that you can avoid just from a very basic perspective if you have your life jacket on. Now, you know, sometimes people will put them under the deck and stuff like that. That's cool. It's better than not having one at all, but you probably aren't getting a whole lot of utility out of it. And so, especially if you're paddling on a river or something like that, I really think that you need to have your life jacket on. Now, of course, if you're in open water and stuff, you know, they've got those really cool inflatable ones, so you don't always have to have the encumbrance around you. You use it if you happen to be in the water, which is rare, but anyway, those things are super cool too, just because, you know, if it is hot or whatever, you know, you can use and still have a lot of safety. The other thing that scares me is getting hung on things. And so, you know, the one very basic thing that people do in rivers is that they'll stand up when they get out. And if you do that, there's a potential for getting stuck on the bottom. Again, I'm not trying to scare you here, I'm just trying to tell you that, like, there are only two things. I mean, I've been kayaking for my entire life, right? And there are only two things that really seem to cause people problems. And it's that temperature thing, and then just getting hung up on stuff. So another thing that you could do, can I use your paddle for just a second? All right, if I was coming by and, you know, I got my paddle stuck in a tree or something like that, way better to just let it go. Now, what if it was attached to you? Like, for instance, when we go in open water, a lot of times we use paddle leashes, right, to keep them from blowing away from us. Critical when you're in open water, because literally, if you end up in the water, your paddle and your boat, they could be on the other side of a wave, and you might never see them again because of the wind or the current or whatever, right? But in rivers and stuff, if you had a paddle leash or something like that, that could be a real problem because you couldn't get away from that. And so even if the current was mild, even if you were in pretty safe conditions, all of a sudden you're having a real struggle with your balance. And so, you know, my encouragement is, you know, don't use paddle leashes on the river, and if you can, you know, always just try and get away from any kind of snag. And what that means to me is, you know, if you're swimming in the current and it's deeper than your knees, you have to have your feet on the surface, okay? I know, again, it seems impractical sometimes. You were used to walking around, you know, but if you're in current, if that water is moving and it's deeper than your knees, if you fall down, that means you can't reach the surface anymore with your arms. You see, the length of my arm is about the same as where my knee is. And so I just encourage you to never put your feet down if you're in current, okay? If it's deeper than your knee. Now, you just have to swim. You have to swim. I mean, whatever way is good for you, you know. Initially what we always have is we have the safety position, which is just on our backs, right? And the thing that's great about that is we can use our feet to protect ourselves, right? So it's kind of a guard, and obviously you can see and breathe in that situation. But my encouragement is, yeah, pretty quick, if you find a deep spot at all, you just want to turn over on your belly to get out of the current, right? Once you're out of the current, you do whatever you want to do. But when you're in the current, it is just really surprising. It's just one of those funny things, you know, like it's one of those things 100 times, 1,000,000 times, nothing will go wrong. What's that one time, unfortunately, there just happened to be a snag right there, and you were walking along just fine, scooting to get out of the river, and then you slipped. It wasn't that you had your foot stuck there and you were like, oh darn, I'm stuck. It's that you slipped. And and then you jam in and fall down. And all of a sudden, I mean, even with my best guides, it takes us 5 minutes to get you out of a situation like that. I don't know about you, but 5 minutes, you know, while I'm sitting eating pastries, that's not a big deal. 5 minutes underwater? Are you kidding me? That's 5 lifetimes, you know? That's a real struggle. And so it's just real easy. It's really just 2 things you have to avoid. You have to avoid, you know, cold water or have the gear to handle it, like a dry suit. And then don't put your feet down in current. It's really, you avoid those 2 things and you're really good. I'll give you an example. Like even here where it's fairly open, if there was lightning right now, I wouldn't make you get out of the water. First of all, 90% of lightning starts on the ground. So if I was in the water, we're already safer. And second, out of that 10%, it's not ever going to hit the lowest point. So if you're in a river especially, you're in the lowest point. And so it's never happened that anyone's been struck by lightning in a kayak in a river. I mean, what we're talking about is a river, you know, this kind of size, not like the Columbia River or the Amazon or something, but, you know, where we're talking about there's higher things around us, right? And so that's one of the surprising things, especially for folks in Texas, you know, like, because we don't have a lot of rain, you know, we have 300 plus days of sun, you know, it's unusual for us to not have the sun shining part of the day. But in other parts of the world, you know, it rains every day, and so it's their policy. They always go. It's safer for them to be on the water than it is for them to get out under a tree or something like that. Like you hear about, you know, golfers and stuff getting struck by lightning when they're like, you know, hiding under a tree or something like that, because, you know, that's actually an attraction for the electricity. So anyway, minor things that, you know, if you don't know, you can't utilize, but you're actually safer when you're on the water. The only safer place is in your car because you've got a cage with rubber underneath it. So that's really the only better place. Any questions about any of that so far? Okay. So again, you know, I look at it as my playground. I'm not trying to tell you these things to scare you. I just want you to avoid those simple things and take those precautions, because then it's all just fun, right? To me, it's really beautiful because I don't know, the water is just different, you know. It's gentler on our bodies than just about anything else. And from a Texan's perspective, it's cooler too. And so, you know, you don't have to have, you know, as much water as you would on a trail. You know, even, you know, the stuff that you got to bring is just so minimal because I call it free air conditioning. You know, you've got the water right there to cool off with. So with that in mind, though, I like that you have a paddle. I brought a few paddles down. Maybe if I could get everybody to grab a paddle and just spread out a little